There's definitely like a core four that we always talk about. The pillars is different names for kind of the same stuff. It's definitely sleep, and it's the basics of sleep initially. It's making sure that you're trying to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, making sure you're getting the appropriate amount of sleep, 7 to 9 hours. If you're an athlete, maybe 10 to 12, depending on what your sport is.
MindHack is a podcast about the psychology of performance, behavior change, and self-optimization. Each episode explores how to think better, work smarter, and live more intentionally through conversations with top thinkers, entrepreneurs, and scientists.
Welcome to the MindHack podcast. I'm your host, Cody McLean, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Neil Paulvin, a physician renowned for his work in optimizing human performance and longevity. Dr. Paulvin specializes in working with high achievers, ranging from CEOs of Fortune 500 companies to professional athletes, helping them to achieve peak physical and mental performance. In this conversation, we'll explore the key foundations anyone should master first in their health journey. We'll delve into intermediate optimization methods like cold exposure and fasting. And also, we'll discuss advanced tactics, including supplement strategies, peptide therapy, and cognitive enhancing nootropics. As always, resources and studies mentioned in this episode will be available at the show notes at mindhack.com. Dr. Paulvin, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Excited to be on. Glad to answer those questions, and it's a lot of good information out there.
So you work closely with CEOs and top athletes, and I'm curious, when someone's first starting their health journey, what fundamentals should they absolutely master first before even thinking about advanced biohacking?
Yeah, there's definitely like a core four that we always talk about. The pillars is different names for kind of the same stuff. It's definitely sleep, and it's the basics of sleep initially. It's making sure that you're getting trying to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, making sure you're getting the appropriate amount of sleep, 7 to 9 hours. If you're an athlete, maybe 10 to 12, depending on what your sport is. We're definitely talking about exercise, make sure you're getting the appropriate amount of exercise, both cardio and weight training, and optimizing that. Diet, which is different for everybody. What's good for me is not good for somebody else. And then also just basic overall lifestyle in terms of stress reduction, connection with people, positivity, all those things we know now do factor in. Mindset and connection are a big part of your overall health, and that affects stress and inflammation and brain health, and just kind of funnels all the way down.
So I believe you mentioned the four pillars that I believe was from Dr. Peter Attia, which is the sleep, nutrition, exercise, and emotional health. So I'm curious, in your experience, is there any one of these pillars that people consistently underestimate or overlook?
Not overlook. I think sleep is sometimes, now because of the stuff that's out there, we get into minutiaville, where I've encountered people, which is great. They're like, oh, I'm using the Oura or my Whoop ring, and my deep sleep is 4% off, or they're like their score is not high enough, they can't put it on social media. It's the fact that you need to do the big stuff first, and then work on the smaller things. And again, it also understanding that it's not just about what you're doing at night, having the weighted blanket or the blackout shades. It's also when you get up in the morning, when you're exposing your body to sunlight, having the appropriate lights in your home at night, where it's not, maybe you have red lights or orange light bulbs. It's the kind of the big picture that they're missing. They know what's there. It's just sometimes I think people now, because of like social media and podcasts and the tech, the wearables that people have, they kind of will worry about the small things that you easier maybe able to fix by just working on the bigger picture stuff first.
Right. And I think there was a study from the Journal of Experimental Psychology that showed just adding 1 or 2 more hours of sleep can boost cognitive performance by like nearly 20%. So I think there's so much that we tend to focus on, whether it's like nootropics or maybe it's like red light or just these little small biohacks. But at the basis, you need to have your foundation set first, because that's going to offer the biggest wins to helping you get into that state that you want to be in.
Yeah, it's optimizing it for you. I mean, we know that some people actually will have decreased performance and increased inflammation and increased insulin resistance if they go beyond 9 hours. There's other people. I was at an event this week where two people need 10, and their data backs it up, where they need 10, 11 hours. It's very individual. It's combining, and the whole thing that we mentioned in your intro is it's not one thing. It's taking what your sleep score, how you feel, combine that with what your biomarker testing is and how you just feel and on your own sensation, and taking all that information and devising a program for yourself. But again, just also starting with the basics. So everybody wishes it was a cookie cutter that I could do the same thing that you're doing and the same thing that Peter Attia is doing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it doesn't work that way. So it's kind of like but the fun game to play, and it's great that Pays are being more proactive now.
And so when you have a client come to your office and they either want to be more productive or focused, or they're an athlete trying to step up their game, what questions do you ask? Like, where do you start in helping them on starting their journey towards like optimizing themselves?
It's usually 3 or 4 questions after you've been doing this for so long. It's what are your top 2 or 3 goals? Because no matter what, between the optimization science and just basic self-improvement, I mean, the James Clear stuff and all that, you can't change 7 things at one time. It's not possible. And especially people who are entrepreneurs and they don't have the time or the energy that's not feed, and you're just going to have, nothing's going to happen. So trying to figure out what those 1 or 2 or 3 goals are, and then trying to work on those as much as you can. Number 2 is going to be, how much time and how much effort do you want to put into this? I have people who say, look, I have 3 months before A, B, or C where I want to be the best I could be for whatever reason. Or they may say, look, I just want the very simplest thing that I can do because I have no time to deal with this. So understanding what their schedule is and what their commitment is always very helpful, because I'm not going to have somebody do a 10 peptides with this and that if they have 5 minutes a day. It's you got to put A and B together. And the last piece is going to be just to get a basic understanding of where they are at that point. Again, I have people come in and they're on their lifestyle, all their pillars are perfect. Their sleep is perfect. Their workout is perfect. They're supplementing the right way. And we need to go more detailed. And these are people who are going to be very proactive and very self-aware. I have other people who don't want to do the basic stuff. I just want to take 17 supplements and hop in a hyperbaric unit and try to just fix things kind of that way. So once you kind of know what their goals are and what their kind of their mindset and the way they work is, it makes it a lot easier and you waste a lot less time. Because I mean, again, everybody's different. There's people who are going to do a deep dive. Other people just kind of need the basics. So that's always helpful.
And so say somebody has all the basics down, then you're going from the basic strategies to kind of more the intermediate, say like cold, like ice baths, saunas, intermittent fasting. I'm wondering what kinds of these kind of intermediate strategies do you find to be the most helpful?
In general, we'll take, for a lot of this conversation, we'll take cost out of the equation for a second. It just makes it a lot simpler. So the first thing I'm doing on everybody is going to be biomarker testing, because it's just obviously knowing, and this is not just the base things you're going to get from your family doc or even beyond what Function Health or some of these other online lab companies are offering at this point, because once we know that the information where the holes and the good things are, it makes it a lot easier to do things. And then that's the easiest way to fix things. That's number 1. The other 2 things kind of in that middle area are going to be, I mean, I think, much more like meditation and any type of whatever meditation and breath work and those types of things are going to be work for a lot of different things and inexpensive and quick. So it kind of checks off a lot of boxes. And if I wanted to throw a third in there, I'd probably would say sauna at this point, because I deal with people all over the world at this point, and most people can find a sauna, be it a dry sauna or infrared sauna. A lot of the other stuff that's out there now isn't as readily available, or people can't have it in their home. And I think those are 3 things that are very check off a lot of boxes. And with all these people, with any patient I deal with, I like things that check off multiple boxes if I can do that first, because it just makes things move faster and motivates the patient to, okay, this is working. Now let's do a deeper dive. I'm feeling it. That's the thing with some of the things that we do is your lab work may show, but you may say, look, I'm doing A, B, and C, but I'm not feeling it. And then people think nothing is happening. And you have to show them, okay, look at your labs. This is what's happening. And they're, oh, okay, fine. But I think that's kind of, again, you have to kind of mix and match patient psychology with what's going to give patients bang for the buck with what they're going to do. So, but that's kind of the middle tier stuff right there.
Yeah. And on that, I think your sauna use is definitely one that continues to show a lot of promise. There was a Finnish study from 2015 that showed regular sauna use about 4 times a week can cut heart disease risk almost in half. And also Dr. Rhonda Patrick seems to be really one of the leading figures on this, emphasizing the use of sauna therapy for cognitive and longevity benefits. And her podcast is great. Found My Fitness podcast, would highly recommend it. Is there any particular regimen of the sauna use, or is it just like access it like once a week? Anything that you find particularly helpful in terms of why are you recommending sauna use? Like what kind of goals are your clients trying to achieve? Is it just for general health? Is it for cognitive or physical health?
It's both. I mean, again, depends on who I'm dealing with and what the answer to the first set of questions was. But what's great is you can do both. I have patients who, in a perfect world, I love them to do 3 to 4 sessions a week, like you mentioned. If it's a dry sauna, 30 to 40 minutes. If it's a dry sauna, about 25 to 30 minutes. If it's infrared sauna, 35 to 45 minutes. It just doesn't get as hot. So you need to get a little bit longer in there to optimize the benefits of it. And again, optimally 3 or 4 times a week. I'd like my athletes to get in there after the workout because it helps with recovery. It also improving VO2 max and endurance. If it's somebody who's more on a health situation, then I don't mind as much when they're doing it. And I use it for cognitive benefits. I use it for detox. I use it for the activation of the heat shock proteins and what that does. So again, it fits, again, checks off a lot of boxes. It's pretty easy to do. A lot of people now have them in their homes. So I think it does a lot different than, like you said. I know Rhonda Patrick's a big proponent of it. I mean, everybody, there's nobody at this point who's kind of blowing off sauna at this point. It's kind of gone from kind of a fad to, okay, there's too much data here to kind of blow it off.
And then now we also have cold exposure methods like the Wim Hof method that's kind of exploded in popularity recently. I think there was a study back in 2014 showed that cold showers can boost dopamine and strengthen the immune response. I'm wondering, is cold exposure something that you regularly incorporate in protocols for your clients?
Unfortunately, it's gone down a lot in my rankings in the last 6 months to a year. The data is not there in a lot of cases. Yeah, like you said, it does work on dopamine. So my patients who have mood issues or depression or have anxiety is great because it's something, again, everybody's access to a cold shower, 15 seconds or 30, 1 minute and you're done, which is great. So for those situations, I'll definitely use it still. It's definitely great to calm down the parasympathetic and sympathetic overcharge where people are just in that fight or flight state. That's what it's really good for, and it's free. So that's where I'll use it as a piece. I think there's people out there who are over pushing cold as a overall longevity therapy. There are people who love it and they do it 11 to 15 minutes like you're supposed to, and it works. Their levels, their markers are great and they are at their best. But now, especially with the data is coming out every couple of weeks about how it affects muscle building and work and sports performance, and then that's one of the most. Muscle is one of the most important things in terms of longevity and health to begin with. So it does seem counterproductive in that regard. It's something where patients have to try to do it around their major weight workouts during the week. I will tell people to try to limit the time they're doing. There's a lot of these clubs will try to have you do 5, 10, 15-minute cold plunges, which we know are not the appropriate duration. So I used 3-4 years ago, I was loving it more and more. I use it personally. But now I find it's a nice little add-on here and there, especially on the mood, anxiety, and we now know the importance of the vagus nerve and sympathetic overdrive. So that's where I love it. So it does affect, most of my patients will do it at some point, but it's not something that we're having them do 2, 3, 4 times a week.
Right. Yeah. It seems like recently there's been a bit of a backlash on cold use. I know personally, I have a ice bath myself, and I like to get in there. It's like 51 degrees for about 8 minutes. I don't shiver or anything like that, but I love it. It's kind of like an afternoon kind of a kick. You definitely feel that norepinephrine kick for even like a few hours afterward, and it just helps me kind of move on and be able to focus in a way. But certainly it's recommended, since it can, it reduces inflammation. So you shouldn't get into an ice bath immediately after working out, unless you're doing some form of cardiovascular exercise where muscle building is not the goal, as I understand it. But I'm curious, what is, so besides the aspect of increasing dopamine, norepinephrine, and those benefits, what has the science recently said that is not like what we thought it was before about cold exposure?
It's kind of the opposite. It's that the data is not showing. People are talking about how great it is for immune boosting, and then also for brain health, and it helps. So again, it helps the mood, the dopamine, the norepinephrine release, but it may not help the inflammation or the mitochondrial reset part. So again, I like things that it's more than what's not showing. So again, if it's not going to give you a lot of benefits and patients only have a certain amount of time to do things, that's where I'm heading to. Does it work for a lot of people? Yeah, it's definitely in my second tier of things I offer patients, depending. But again, it's just not as, again, I think there's really a lot of good data has not come out of it. It's more on the bad side. And again, that's why. It's not that. It definitely are some smaller studies that show, I think one or two some really small immune boosting benefit, but nothing that's earth shattering. And then the weight loss things have really have only been shown in animals and not in humans. So a lot of the data that a lot of the companies purport are not getting backed up. That's unfortunate. There's definitely some benefit to it. And now a lot of people, and we're now definitely in the AI era where everybody's going on whatever their LM of choice is and they can just say, okay, look, well, there's no human data backing this up or that up. So it's not like they have to go through PubMed now and look at 17,000 articles. They have everything within 5 minutes in the palm of their hand. So it's made things easier and also a little bit harder because patients are much more educated about their health to begin with, and then they have that data backing up. So it's just, again, the data is it's not where it should be for that in certain things.
Right.
And again, a lot of people are saying for brain health or trying to build muscle or lose weight, and it just doesn't fit in that part. But again, my patients who have issues with anxiety or brain fog, it still has a nice fit there. So it's a more of a niche type thing than, okay, like sauna or hyperbaric, which is going to work on everything.
Yeah. And now moving on to kind of intermittent fasting, I know intermittent fasting has also had some studies come out recently that seem to go against this long-standing belief that it's good for weight loss, it's good for longevity. In fact, I think one recent study indicated that it can have a negative effect on longevity. I'm wondering what kind of have you been following in relation to intermittent fasting and its safety and efficacy? Yeah,
it's kind of fallen into the same, actually even quite a worse category than cold plunge, because a lot of the studies are just showing that, again, it's either a net zero or a negative. I think the first thing is, I think now, again, for a variety of reasons, intermittent fasting, kind of like a lot of other terms out there, has become bastardized. It's like what you call intermittent fasting is not what I consider intermittent fasting, and nobody knows what we're talking about. We know that in most cases, intermittent fasting is the benefits that people really want are going to start anywhere between 16 hour 20, depending on the person. So that's number one. So that's the first thing. And then the second piece is going to be, some people are doing like these 12-hour breaks, which is mostly to try to reset the brain and help them potentially lose weight, not because of the intermittent fasting itself, but training your insulin, trying to calm down the insulin spikes and things like that. So some people misinterpret what they're doing. They're not really doing quote unquote intermittent fasting in a true way. They're just trying to have an altered diet, but eat maybe 2 meals a day. So it's become very confusing what actually people are trying to achieve with intermittent fasting. I think for the right people, I think fasting has definite benefits to it. If you're going to do it a longer term, people can do anything over 24 hours. Between 24 and 72 hours seems to be a sweet spot where the data actually is pretty good. But that's not a daily lifestyle change. That's somebody who's going to do a fast once or twice every 2 to 3 months. They may do a 2, 3, 4, whatever they can do. That, or even the fasting mimicking diet, something like a Prolon, has data that's out there. Whereas a Prolon, it's a simulated long-term fast. I think the 12, 14-hour fasting, even the 16 hours, just doesn't have as much data, especially is more concerned with female health, especially women who are having with normal menstrual cycles where it may affect you. You may want to do intermittent fasting at certain times. There's some people who say it's great. Other people say it doesn't work. I don't find it works well in my menstruating patients, especially my younger menstruating patients. So again, it's something where I know a lot of my patients do try to do a 24 to 36 hour fast minimum, maybe once a quarter if they can do it. Some will do it once a month if they really like it. Because they find because that's when you're getting autophagy, which is clearing out your cells. You're getting the You're getting the ketone production. We now know more and more about the benefits of either ketosis or exogenous ketones in terms of brain health and inflammation and things like that. So that's really why I just now use the term fasting because that has benefits. Intermittent fasting I just use more as a behavioral tool, because it is a way of getting people to stop binge eating sometimes, and they're also eating normal sized meals and slowly eating them rather than saying, okay, and then the other problem becomes, okay, well, I'm fasting for 16 hours. I now have to eat everything I want to eat in 8 hours, plus I need to coordinate that with my workouts and make sure I'm getting enough protein. And oh, by the way, I'm on Ozempic or Zepbound, I need to get more I just don't use it much. Old school intermittent fasting, I just don't use much anymore for most people.
No, and in hindsight, that makes sense. I know when I was doing intermittent fasting, I would end up waiting to eat until like 6 o'clock, and then I would gorge on so much food that I would just feel terrible afterwards, even though I was eating relatively like healthy paleo-ish food. And it makes sense, the autophagy where your cells start to go into repair mode, and the ketosis is that I know I would use ketosis sticks to measure am I in ketosis, and I would find that intermittent fasting doesn't do that. And so it makes sense that only extended or longer fasts are going to have that kind of effect on your body, and that these sort of intermittent fasting isn't really doing a whole lot. But I completely agree. I think that's exactly right, is that intermittent fasting is very helpful for a behavioral perspective. If you're somebody who wakes up and you end up eating a lot of sugar in the morning and you can't control yourself, like that can start to help you try to change that behavior. So I see intermittent fasting perhaps has its place, but isn't really what we thought it was, at least in terms of, say, fat loss or longevity in the same way that we thought it was. So with that sense, I'd love to move into your wheelhouse and kind of this more advanced optimization into kind of supplements, peptides, and nootropics. So I'm wondering, how do you approach this arena when you have a client coming to you for advice or recommendations?
I mean, it goes back initially to those initial questions I mentioned initially about goals and how involved, because again, then you're talking about, okay, how many pills do you want to be taking a day? Are you okay giving yourself 3 shots a day? Are you okay? A lot of these people are traveling all over the country or the world. They have to deal with putting them on ice and all those things. That's always the first question. But the main thing is, what are their goals? And then are they somebody who only wants to do with 1 or 2 things at a time? Or they're in for a full kind of protocol? And then again, also, if they're naive to stuff, they've never really done anything, they just hear it on from what social media, a blog, whatever, we're going to go slow with them, maybe do 2 or 3 things initially. If somebody come in and say, I'm already doing A, B, C, and D, and they speak the language where they understand stacking and cycling and all that stuff, but I want to do this, and this, then we're doing a much deeper dive, talking about how to combo stuff, how to cycle, which for those who don't know, cycling is a lot of things you're not taking in perpetuity. You may do things for 3, 6, 2 months at a time, stop it for 2 or 3 months, and then potentially going back on it, or it could be a multiple month gap. It depends. So it's like juggling. There's a rhythm to it. So those are the main things I'm looking at. And again, it depends on what their concerns are. Are they just trying to be better in the short term? Are they looking more on the long term things where they have a family history of Alzheimer's, or they've had concussions? as a sports, as an athlete. So it all kind of depends.
So Dr. Andrew Huberman frequently recommends specific nootropics like alpha GPC or omega-3, specifically like 1,000 milligrams of EPA as a means of kind of enhancing general cognitive function. I'm wondering, are there any specific supplements or nootropics that you consistently see as delivering reliable results, like in general as like a baseline?
For brain or just overall?
Overall.
I mean, pretty much what's actually kind of good. I'm in Manhattan, so there's been a lot of lectures here. And the last couple of weeks, we kind of have this debate. It's kind of exactly what you're asking is there's kind of like a core 4 or 5 that almost everybody agrees on that have the efficacy, they work, they're not insanely expensive, and they have the data behind them. So, I mean, now as we're recording this, creatine, it sounds like creatine should be in the water at this point. We're actually now, everybody 6 months ago was 5 grams. Now people are doing 15, 20 grams a day. Sometimes it's split doses. That, again, if I hear any doses, definitely talk to your healthcare provider. Just have to throw a little caveat in there. Creatine, fish oil, which you mentioned. And again, even I tend to push fish oil unless it's a stomach issue. Because again, there's a lot of different benefits to it. Vitamin D, if their levels are not where it should be. I love CoQ10, which does have really good data to it. Those are kind of the core 4 things that apply to everybody in terms of supplementation. And then there's different ones that we kind of will mix and match depending on the person. There's things like taurine or apigenin or like the new NAD, the new NR that has just come out of the precursors. Those are kind of curcumin is now more and more data coming out. The polyphenols that you either get through food or through supplementation. That's kind of the next kind of level there. In terms of just true supplements that are out there, I would say are kind of the ones that we tend to recommend to everybody or most people. You do want to do an antioxidant, and that's at least most of the time. Athletes want to be a little more careful because we know excess antioxidants are going to cause issues in terms of performance. So we'll recommend, a lot of people now are doing glutathione, who like just doing an injection once or twice a week. Some people are doing what's called ergothioneine, which is a really good specific antioxidant. We'll try to, in theory, target senescence, which is kind of the zombie cells, which is kind of get the terminology for. How we do that is still kind of a little bit of a debate at this point. Quercetin and ficin seems to be the simplest point without the most side effects. There's some newer things out there we're still kind of trying to, that probably will be ready for prime time in a little bit in the future. And then mitochondrial support. And that's usually going to be, like as I mentioned, CoQ10. We're looking at CoQ10. We're looking at antioxidant. We're looking at a supplement called urolithin A, which has a lot of benefits also in terms of the workout space. So that's kind of what we're looking at overall. And then we just try to figure out the best way to make a combo of those different things without going overboard.
Are there any one of these? So you mentioned like glutathione injections, but I know you can get that in a pill. And then same for NAD or NR. So I know they're popularized for doing IV therapies, but you can also buy them in a pill. Are there any specific nootropics that you recommend should be through injection, or can they be equally taken and have an equal level of efficacy through just supplements in general?
How do I answer that question? Because there's actually a lot of nuance to that. If it's just for brain function, I don't love a lot of the pills that are out there. If it comes down to it, I'm not a fan of any of the glutathione pills. We know just based on bioavailability, either should be shot or IV. What was I going to say? And then in terms of, things like carnitine, which is actually a good nootropic. Again, same answer. We refer patients to injection IV. The data is just a lot better on it. Even patients who are just using it for testosterone production to boost receptors. So I think a lot of cases injection IV is better. Again, it comes down to practicality a little bit. Creatine is obviously one that there's no IV anyway, but creatine as a powder is amazing. Fish oil as a pill is amazing in most patients. Just got to make sure it's not rancid. It's a quality product. Curcumin as a pill is amazing. There is now a lot of people who are starting to do IV curcumin. And that maybe I imagine senescence for that, maybe something we start using as a senolytic in the near future and for things like Alzheimer's. So that's fine as a pill, again, as long as it's quality product. Methylene blue, which has gotten a lot more controversy in the last month or two. As a pill, it does work really well as long as you kind of understand the nuances to it. It's not something to be taking at some of the high doses are on the internet. But you can do oral. I do have patients who do IV, and they do, in some cases, will do better, but it's not something that you have to do. NAD, the new NO that's kind of in the last 6 to 8 weeks is either injection or IV right now. So that's kind of a mandate at this point. I mean, you can do well with 1-MNA or the precursors. They're not as good, but they are helpful, and they are in oral form. Another and last one I'll mention in terms of nootropics is like RG3, which is a ginseng derivative, which is a nose spray, which a lot of pro athletes can use because it's natural. And sometimes it kind of goes to the point where if you want something just in terms of brain health, a lot of times we'll have them do nose sprays because they penetrate the blood, get into the brain much easier than pills will. It's a lot more effort for them to get in there. So for brain specifically, I'm not usually as big of a fan of pills as other people are. I think if you're doing for general health, then you have a little more leeway. But brain's protected for a reason, and you want to make sure what you're doing, if you're especially with an issue, is getting in there. And sometimes that's either IV or a nose spray, or even self-injection, as opposed to just taking a pill. Hope your gut can digest it. It's going to get past the blood-brain barrier, and then get to where it needs to get to.
Yeah, there's obviously so much nuance to this, and there's new studies and information coming out all the time, but it thus necessitates the importance of seeking out somebody like yourself to help guide somebody so that they don't mess themselves up in a way that they shouldn't, because we want to increase performance, not decrease it. And on that note, there's somebody, Dave Asprey, I'm sure you're familiar. He kind of popularized the idea of using modafinil as a nootropic for productivity, and in some ways as like an alternative to Adderall. And there's been an explosion of these kinds of cognitive enhancers, and things like there's like Subroxy, Sulbutiamine, Phenylpiracetam, L-tyrosine, bromontane, and all these tend to increase dopamine levels. I'm curious, what's your perspective on using cognitive enhancers regularly?
I respect Dave. He was definitely one of the first to enter the area. Again, I think because of where we are now, I don't. Actually, I was somewhere that I got into. I think it was X or something, where I was getting a debate with people out there. The reason people use a lot of those is because they're dealing with healthcare providers who don't have no idea, understand the space at all. So they try to self-medicate in a lot of cases. So I'm not, again, there's so many more things out there now than even a couple of years ago. So I'm not as big a proponent of those things as I was even a couple of years ago. Modafinil, I find, is great as a general reset, is because it's a really big, powerful sledgehammer. Initially, it's great. I think it's also great to be used episodically, like maybe once or twice a week. I tend to don't like people on it in perpetuity because I think they tend to have more side effects and brain fog than benefits from it. There are some people who do really well with it, but I do like it episodically. I think there are people out there who use it. This is the only thing. I just don't think it's there. I think things, the dopamine boosters are great for the right person in the short term. It's not something you need to, could have some long-term side effects on the down end, on the back end, if you could just do them as your only go-to and don't fix the problem. I think that's the thing with the brain is we can now do a lot of data and testing and scans where we can figure out what the problems are. And that's kind of how you want to do it, and not just kind of do just guessing and throwing darts somewhere. The other ones you mentioned, like Subroxy and bromontane and Noopept, and the ones that people love, assuming that, we'll just again assume that they're getting good quality product, because it's harder to confirm if it's good or not. I mean, especially for some of them, they're for the right. Bromontane is great for the right person. Again, I think in short blasts, Subroxy, as long as it's done with the same right combos, I think it's okay. I think, again, I just keep saying this, I think right now there's just better things out there right now. And you told me 5, 6, 7 years ago, I love the racetams. It's just not something I even recommend to people anymore. It's kind of like, a 17-year-old driving a race car. It's very powerful and you just don't know where it's going to go. I mean, you have to make sure you're on the right dose and you're on the right racetam, you're getting a choline source. And it's just, I find it very hard to get people for where they want to be with that. And again, there's so many other things now out there between technology and some of the other peptides. And even just, again, simple creatine. I've had people taking 10 grams of creatine and say, wow, I'm a new person. And that has no side effects and it's very easy to manage. And so I think it's getting replaced. I think a lot of those are going to get replaced and as more and more things come out, probably in the next year to 18 months, I think a lot of the kind of the broad stroke ones are going to just kind of be the black market people. And a lot of the other ones, we're going to see a lot more cleaner instruments that we can use. So I think that, again, that's where a lot of this stuff, I think we're seeing where the data's out. Obviously, I mean, the amount of billions of dollars are being poured into this space where every website and every influencer now and every business is having a longevity and optimization part of their company. I mean, the data new things are pouring out every week, it seems like. I think when Dave started, he was against the grain, and now this stuff is almost human nature. I mean, everybody monitors their sleep and everybody's doing something for their brain health. So I think now, again, I think there's other things out there, but those things definitely have their place. I just think they're more episodic than Holy Grail at this point.
Right. And I'm somebody who's experimented with a lot of these things. I know like modafinil, it increases your dopamine levels by 150 to 200% above your baseline. And the thing that I kind of found myself stuck in is kind of like a cyclic loop where you use the substance, you experience that focus, that attention, and then you need it again. And you might try to bounce between different types of nootropics or cognitive enhancers, but I think you're getting kind of a risk of diminishing. Basically, you're diminishing your baseline dopamine, right? And so that's like the risk that you can kind of get caught in. I think bromontine, there might be a like small exception to that rule in terms of it actually helping to have perhaps like a neuroprotective effect. But a lot of these, they're kind of like, hitting yourself with a smaller version of Adderall in a way. Is that kind of what you find in terms of why you think these are kind of on the way out? And I'm curious as to if you don't recommend these substances necessarily anymore, kind of what do you recommend in place of them?
Like I said, right now, I definitely think a lot of them are on their way out or just not. I mean, I think modafinil has its place. And if I have somebody who's literally, I mean, if you look at what it's actually indicated for shift workers and people who work to have flipped days, it's an incredible medication. It's just like you said, you get side effects from it. And again, now we have other things to use. I think so. And again, I think so number one is, like I said, we can do lab work. We can do cognitive testing through either QEEG or labs or PET scans, where we can look at the brain and say, okay, no, here's where the problem is. You've excess brain inflammation, or unfortunately, there's a buildup of tau or amyloid protein or syncluin, or you have an autoimmune, you've had damage to your blood-brain barrier, and now you have an autoimmune brain issue. So we want to work on, because I can give you all the bromontane you want. If we're not fixing your immune system or fixing the blood-brain barrier, is the question, are you chasing your tail? Or now, again, unfortunately, with the popularity of toxins and microplastics and all these things, if your toxin levels are through the roof, I should be fixing your toxin levels and clearing them out of you and helping you remove them from your lifestyle, not just giving you bromontane. And we have all now 7-10 years ago when Dave started all that really wasn't there yet. Now anybody can access that. It's not insanely expensive anymore. So again, I think that's kind of, we fixed the problem. If somebody's a mood issue, or they know that, I have a big presentation coming up, or I'm just burnt out, I need something to get me going for the next 2 or 3 days, they have their place. But again, in terms of most people, if they have a dopamine issue, it's either from this increased inflammation, increased stress, a brain trauma. They may not be making enough for whatever reason, gut, diet, again, all it fixed the problem. And those are just Band-Aids in the short term. What am I using? Long answer to a short question is, I love the tech. I mean, anybody who can hop on a Hyperbaric or do a red light and then also work on if you do that, do a red light helmet, or even a red light panel, and potentially work on your vagus nerve for anything from cold to like a vagus nerve stimulator, you are hitting three really powerful tools by themselves. I love, again, I said I love creatine. I think creatine, I love low-dose naltrexone for the brain, which is not, most people can't get that themselves. They need to get that through a doctor. Just because it resets the microglial cells, which are linked to a lot of the damage in the brain, and it combats inflammation and NLRP3 and a lot of other stuff. So it does a lot of things with minimal side effects. For the right person, I still love methylene blue, even though it's getting some bad raps recently. I like erythromycin if they have access to a doctor, or I love cortexin for people who don't have access to it. Those are peptides. I'm finding a lot of people with the new NR injections or IVs are saying that they're getting amazing benefits from. We still waiting for the no data. And then another one I'll throw out there now is a lot of patients who are on the GLP-1s, especially like Zepbound or Mounjaro, because the way it works is are having great benefits. So that, I mean, to me, I mentioned RG3 already. So those are kind of, I mean, there's so many other ones out there depending on what the issue is. But those are kind of a really good packet. One other one is something called plasmalogen, the product called prodrome, which are a fatty acid that you need for your that helps with the conductive of the nerves and the way the neurons work. That's another one that's really good. So, and then you need to work on mitochondrial health. So again, there's a lot of with brain health now. You want to hit all those different buckets, not just dopamine or let's put you on this racetam, which we're not sure really what it's doing, but it's going to give you that quick caffeine or stimulant burst, and then you're going to crash again. It's good short term. It's not a fixing the problem solution, and that's kind of where again I'm at right now.
So largely is try to avoid these dopaminergic substances, perhaps, and focus on other aspects of general health and well-being to get yourself to where you want to be. Is kind of generally what you're saying.
Definitely do that, but again, in the short term, if you're overworked or you have a lot of stress or just have a motivation for whatever reason, it could be mental, it could be physical. It's great. And they're good. And bromotan is great in the short term. Modafinil is great in the short term. Neopep for the right.
What about CMAX and Salank?
They work a little bit differently. CMAX and CLANK are great add-ons. I don't have that many people who use it by themselves and say, wow, I'm on CMAX and CLANK. I feel like a new person. But they do work and they have very minimal side effects and they're very easy to control. But again, I tend to add them in, and again, because you only can really use them for 3 or 4 months. I'll get them on the things I mentioned. They'll do CMAC and or CLANK for 2, 3, 4 months, and then we'll add in other things depending on where we are. But that's kind of how I do things. And I think a lot of people are heading that way. That some of the older school ones are more episodic.
You briefly mentioned the GLP-1s. I believe there's 2 main ones on the market, right? Semaglutide and tirzepatide, if I'm saying that correctly. But then there's also a third one called retatrutide that I believe is still undergoing kind of research. And from understanding how these GLP-1s act on our dopamine system as well, is that the reason why they seem to be having a positive effect on helping people with alcohol cessation or cigarette cessation is that it's lowering your dopaminergic drive to have cravings for these substances. So simultaneously, it seems that there's kind of a ancillary report is that along with these substances, people are reporting kind of depression, anhedonia, which for those who don't know is a lack of ability to experience pleasure. I'm wondering, are these any kinds of side effects that you've seen within your practice? And do you think there's a place for these GLP-1s in terms of microdosing? I know Bryan Johnson was recently microdosing semaglutide, but he stopped simply because he noticed that it increased his heart rate, his resting heart rate
of the medication. So what's the first part of the question? Is it something? Do I see a lot of side effects with the GLP-1s?
Well, I guess I'm mostly interested in the dopaminergic aspect of how these tend to lower dopamine levels, which can cause depression or anhedonia. Is that something that's kind of just underreported because the patients who are on it are just so happy with, the fat loss effects? Is this something that, say, somebody who's kind of just trying to get a little bit more fit, say they're going to the gym, they're trying to lose that extra bit of body weight. Do you think there's a place for those people? And I've seen it kind of being used in that experience underground, not somebody who's obviously has a high BMI that it's prescribed for. But curious, do you think there's a place for that? And what kind of effects have you seen in terms of any patients that you prescribed it to?
Yeah. So, there are some that studies out there that show that. There are other ones who show because of the way it works there's multiple GLP receptors in the brain, that way it works on the hippocampus and other areas, that it's actually helping the mood. So I very rarely have seen mood issues with any of that type of stuff. Simply, it's kind of, you got to fill the bucket faster as leaking. If they're already dealing with multiple brain issues, is there a slight chance there could be increased risk? The data that was initially out has been disproven in terms of leading to depression and other mood issues, that it was just the way the studies were done. So it was study error. I've had nobody have any type of mood disorder from it specifically. And then in terms of the dopamines, again, there's now studies out there showing it does decrease the effect, how much patients are smoking and drinking alcohol. So it's the way it works on the brain globally, and also with the gut and the vagus nerve. So it's working more in multiple areas. So I see it as a net positive. It may affect dopamine production on a smaller term, but there's still a bigger positive than negative effect. So I use it. It's become probably one of my biggest go-to. I don't treat a lot of patients with addiction issues by themselves, but a lot of times they'll come in and say, yeah, I'm a little overweight, or I want to use it for health maintenance, and I drink too much, or I want to get rid of my smoking habit. I've heard A, B, or C is helpful. So then I use it I use it as a combo. In terms of I think microdosing, again, it's one of those terms, like I mentioned before, it's kind of been bastardized a little bit, in the sense that, again, every influencer and whatever is talking about it. Microdosing is great. I love microdosing for patients who are not trying to lose weight. I love microdosing for patients who are finishing up and they feel like the other effects like that we've seen, like decreased inflammation or cognitive or mood or the smoking. Then we'll microdose as much as we can. I've had very few people say, I'm going to do half the normal dose and lose weight on the meds. Maybe somebody who needs to lose like 2 or 3 pounds, which is, again, a whole nother ethical discussion for another day, may do it. So my weight loss patients, I'm not using microdosing initially. My patients are getting other health benefits. That's where we do the microdosing, and I think is great. The downside is right now we don't really have that many. We have no studies on microdosing, on any dosing below the 2.5 on Zepbound, or the 0.5 or 0.25 on semaglutide. So, and then the problem is right now the drug companies aren't doing those tests. So you're kind of in a black hole of, with a lot of these things we want tests, is who's going to pay or do these tests in an appropriate way. So it is kind of a gray area. We see enough patients with benefits of it and there's no harm to it. If we know it's lower than the starting dose, I'll keep doing it as much as I can. But I think more and more people will be doing it, but it's not something that everybody should be doing. I think, again, everybody goes on podcasts and say, oh, microdosing for everyone. And I think that it comes with a big grain of salt.
And so GLP-1s are really the most popular peptide that there is right now. But I think the one that's been in the community for the longest is BPC 157, body protective compound. And I know that's been growing a lot. And also, like, you have the Wolverine stack where you combine BPC and then TB500 as seemingly like the number one stack for helping if you have some kind of injury, muscle injury. I'm curious, what kind of peptides outside of the GLP-1s do you find most popular, or that you recommending the most often?
You probably hit on. Definitely BPC and the Wolverine stack are by far number one at this point. I think GHK is catching up really quickly, GHK copper, because of its skin benefits. It does have a little bit of brain benefit as well. But GHK is very quick.
I think that, sorry. The risk with that, as I recall, is that I guess it turns your skin it improves your skin a lot, but then you can become too tan, and that perhaps you should also avoid the sun. That you have to get the dosage really.
That's melanotan 1 and 2. So GHK really shouldn't cause many issues on normal dosing. A lot of stuff, because of the way people are talking about dosing, it's kind of the same thing that's happening with methylene blue a lot, that it gets not made fun of, but it gets downgraded or downplayed because the dose that people are seeing these side effects is not where we prescribe the medications at. GHK, especially, a lot of them are using the cream form, and what's great is you can mix it with almost any other skin compound under the sun, NAD or rapamycin or all these different things that work really, really well. So those are probably by far those are the leaders right now by a lot at this point. A lot of the weight loss peptides have lost some steam just because everybody's on the GLP-1s at this point. A lot of times we use that on the people who don't want to use or don't want to spend the money on the GLP-1s anymore. Things like tesofensine. The other one that's seeing huge popularity is Amlexanox, which used to be a prescription as an antihistamine. It's great for people with mast cell issues, which is people who can't use their histamine appropriately, and they get hives and brain fog and gut issues. And it's also good weight loss. It also helps with brain inflammation. So it's being used. I use it now as an add-on in my brain fog patients. The patients love it. Those are by far the three that are out there. One that's not really a peptide. It's not a peptide. It's a compound. It is something called Sloop, which is in the weight in the bodybuilding community. And now it's something that helps with muscle building, weight loss, energy, cognition. We still don't know the exact appropriate dosing yet, but it's something that you're going to hear more and more about. That's probably going to be the new hot thing that's out there. It probably already is in a lot of circles. It's just going to be really trying to harness. Like, we know how to dose BPC. We know how to dose, we know how to dose GHK and Amlexanox. We don't really know perfectly Sloop yet, but that's the one that people will be asking for and are already starting to ask for now.
One combination that I've seen mentioned a lot online is CJC1295 and ipamorelin, which, as I understand, work together to have a rapid increase in growth hormone, at least as long as it doesn't have the DAC, so it doesn't have as much of an effect on ghrelin and your hunger, and as much of a bad impact on your glucose levels. And that seems to be useful for helping to decrease body fat, helping to increase muscle gain if you're working out. And that's kind of in a growth hormone types of peptides. Is that something that you talk about at all or look into or recommend?
I do. I use it. I like it a lot. Because you said it works on two different pathways, which makes it a little more effective. You don't have the side effects on either one, which is great. It is very hard to get quality CJC at this point. Which makes it a little more complicated. Patients are having to use quote unquote research grade, which is not really regulated. And that's a personal decision of where a lot of people now are self-testing their peptides. That's a big business thing now where a lot of labs are opening up. And that's, again, a whole nother conversation for another day. But between the skin benefits, the brain benefits, the healing, muscle building, we're hoping that hopefully more and more lab studies are happening before the pandemic on using growth hormone, low dose growth hormone in a health optimization healing fashion we're undergoing. And then they kind of got stopped during the pandemic and they're starting to come back up again. We know they're great for wound healing, post-surgery, pre-surgery. They definitely have their place. It's just really just finding quality product at this point, but it's definitely in that next tier. T-thymosin beta-4, CJC, MOTS is another one if you can find it. And then a new product called SS31 or Aleprotide, which is great for brain health and heart health. Those are kind of the next tier ones that we use for a lot of patients. And they're great. All of them have huge upside to them.
And in terms of sourcing, you mentioned that a few times. So I know that you can buy these peptides online. There's so many different vendors online, and you can join Facebook groups. There's the peptide subreddit, and I guess they don't really recommend them they're not allowed to recommend specific vendors on Reddit anymore. But you can find a lot of vendors that sell these types of peptides, and they all say not for human consumption. In reality, like, a lot of them could be mixed in somebody's kitchen, or they might be buying it all from the same vendor and maker in China. So as you said, like, quality control is really, really difficult. I know being involved in some of these Facebook groups is that some people will test the peptides that they buy and they'll post the results online, because a little known fact that people aren't aware of, even though all these supplement vendors, peptides, like, they will publish their third-party testing, but all they're doing is sending one sample to this lab, and they could send them whatever they want, and that's what they end up testing, and they get a certificate certificate for that. It's not somebody who's coming to their facility and actually testing, the ingredients off the manufacturing line. So some of these peptides, I'm curious, are they things that you can go to a doctor for and ask for a prescription? Or are some of these you're not even allowed to prescribe as a doctor? Like, where would somebody want to go if they want to have quality peptides?
You've hit the million, billion, trillion-dollar question at this point. The only thing I'll say, that we thought with the new administration, and they're very pro-peptides of the people he brought into the administration, we thought things would be cleared up much quicker than they are. That didn't happen, and we don't foresee that happening in the near future. That we thought that would be the first resolution. So right now, it really comes down to, and I literally have gone to multiple debates in the last 2 weeks on social media, in multiple facets, is it really comes down to your mindset. In a perfect world, you would get products that are done through a compounding pharmacy, that are tested, and there's state and national regulation on what you can and can't do, and how you do it, and how it's supposed to be checked to make sure it's efficacious. But those are expensive. Those have to be done through a doctor. And now, because every pharmacy makes only different products because of business reasons, and then also where you live. If you live in California or Michigan and now Massachusetts, they're very hard to get anything sent to them. So it now becomes a dance of not only have to find so that's part of the issue. So a lot of people are saying, I don't want to deal with a doctor. They don't know about peptides like I do. Then I'm just going to do the research, and I'm, like you said, I'm going to self-test the labs and understand it's for research only and take that chance. So it's a big. People need to understand in their mind what the biggest prize. Like, I don't want to spend $500 seeing somebody who really knows this stuff. And I understand there's some people who are very knowledgeable, and they want to do, and we kind of gone to the self-doing phase of health optimization for various reasons. And I think because of AI, that's only going to continue to become a way of doing things. Again, I'm of course jaded and kind of. I'm just kind of, I always say get anything you can from a compounded pharmacy first. But again, I think that may change at some point, depending on either the government's going to change the rules because they see how much benefit there is, they want to regulate it, or 80% of the people are going to go into the non-regulated because they can't jump through all these hoops anymore. Because the hoops are getting worse more than better at this point. And more and more people are just saying, I don't want to wait 2 weeks for my peptides. I don't want to have to go from one pharmacy or spend X amount of money on it. So I think we're at a crossroads in the next 6 to 9 months. I think we'll have a winner, because I know literally 3 or 4 personal labs are coming out and the price points aren't bad. So I think eventually, like you said, people post, oh, so-and-so is really good quality stuff, and they may tend to do that. We'll have to see. I hope they don't, but I think that may win out eventually, at least in the next year or two.
Yeah, I know RFK Jr. seemed to be open to peptides and kind of opening that up. I guess prior to the new administration, I believe there was a ban on BPC 157, but then you could prescribe an alternate compound. Then I'm not sure if that ban is still in place.
BPC.
But certainly it's...
Yeah, so those with
BPC 157.
It's a dance, and compounding pharmacies are the best at winning the game and being 2 steps ahead of the administration. By just changing the formulation slightly, it becomes a new compound, obviously, and that's not on the ban list, so they can make it. And then eventually, like, it's kind of like any other game. Like, if you're a sports fan and the WADA list, they eventually catch on and they change it a little bit again. It's like it's a cat and mouse game.
Yeah, cat and mouse, yeah.
So there's definitely other forms now of BBC, which I've had patients use, and they say it's just as good as the old stuff. And not anybody said this isn't working like the old school BBC anymore. And the weird part of this whole thing, and I'm not going to get political, is you can't prescribe the BBC injections or any of these. Some of the ones that are on the ban list is an injection form, but if you take it as a pill or a capsule or even a nose spray, that's fine. So it's a very weird demarcation of what you can and can't do. Like, if you go to a lot of these high quality pills, I can tell you 5 companies that make good BBC pills, and they're not on the ban list. They have no issues. The FDA is not coming after them. There's nobody knocking at their door, and I don't understand the difference, which is weird, which says there's something else going on. But I I think we'll have to see what happens. It is a cat and mouse game. And I know, again, I tell patients right now, from almost, if you know how to play, know what's out there, you can manage to get every peptide that was on the ban list, except for one that is still hard to get. And that's mostly because it wasn't very popular. And for most people, there's no money in it. But you can pretty much get everything in some other formulation, or there's some pharmacies still making it, but it's a cat and mouse game. And the good part is a lot of these ones that you change by 1 or 2 amino acids or add a bond or something are almost as effective as what the original was. And the government just can't keep up, and it won't.
Right. And I guess we can hope, and I assume as more of this knowledge about the benefits of peptides come out, is that the government will be more open to the use of these compounds, because it's clear that this aspect of, as Peter Attia has pointed out with his Health 2.0, is that health and medicine for the longest time has just been about treating disease. But now we need to look at how do we optimize lifespan? How do you optimize for your health span, as he would say, in terms of living the longest, being healthy into your 80s, and having your cognitive function, be with you throughout your entire lifetime. So I think we're going to see we're starting to see a transition, I think, for that. And I hope that's just going to continue from where it's at today.
I hope so, because we're now looking at prevention medicine. I keep saying this. I was at an event yesterday. I know preventative medicine, as opposed to the way we do medicine in the U.S., is where we're heading to, and the generation behind me and the generations behind me are going to do it. And that makes more sense in a logical way. That it's prevent illness rather than just treat on the back end. And peptides are part of that. So I think it's eventually going to be part of the mainstream. It's just, it could take 5, 10, 15 years. So I hope it's sooner. It's just going to be, again, the way it's part of it's always trying to deal with the government, which is obviously could be tough. But I think we're getting there slowly but surely. It's just going to be how fast can we get things to move.
So I'd love to just go through some rapid fire questions just to kind of close out today's conversation.
Sure.
Great. What's the best supplement everybody should consider?
Everybody should consider creatine.
What's the most overrated health trend right now?
Overrated? I think you hit on both of them at this point. I would probably say intermittent fasting, because there would be more benefit to cold.
What's a favorite daily habit that you would prescribe for high performers?
It's 2. It's either doing some type of mindset practice when you wake up, or it's actually a simple thing for a lot of my high performers. It's get the work, if they can make it work in their schedule, get things done between that 5 and 7 hours in the morning. That's when their brain's going to work the best, where things are quiet, no matter what their lifestyle is. Those are the simple things that they have the biggest long-term benefits. Because they feel productive, their brain is going, and then they also have time to do everything else.
What's the biggest waste of money you've seen in health optimization?
Wow. The biggest waste of money? There's a lot of them out.
Or that you think is the
biggest
waste of money in terms of...
I think the alkalization, alkalized water and all those types of things, I think is a huge waste of money. I'm trying to think, and of course now I can't think of one of the other ones besides that one. I'm probably going to get yelled at for this. I think a lot of the older school ozone stuff I think there's not good data for it. And I think it's kind of a waste of money. There are people who do great with it. I just haven't seen a lot of patients do great with it. Those are probably the 2 things I can think off the top of my head.
And what's the most underrated biohack that you think more people should know about?
Well, if you're taking cost out of it, I would say, a cheap one would be just putting red and orange light bulbs in your house for at night. Your house, the light should be the color of the sun. So during the day, yellow is fine, but at night when it's like orange and red, that's what you should be looking at. in terms of the cost agnostic type things, I mean, I think Hyperbaric is by far the best at this point. There's just too many benefits from it. It's just unfortunately not easy to access or could be cost people out at this point. And the thing that we'll be talking about, if you did this interview in a year from now, it would probably be plasma exchange or plasmapheresis, which is kind of like an oil change for your body. And a study just came out, I think, last week, when we're doing this in terms of it lowers your biological age by 2.5 years. It lowers your inflammation. It lowers your autoimmune issues. And there'll be more studies coming out in the next year or so. The problem is right now it's anywhere between 8 to 12 grand a session. So not everybody's going to be doing that. But I think as the price and availability goes up and down, I think that's going to be probably, but maybe number one.
That brings some follow-up questions before I go to my conclusion. I know that Bryan Johnson just did a video where he used the hyperbaric chamber for a period of time. I believe it was like 60 days. And he measured his levels or his biomarkers and he showed improvement, but he's not sure just yet as to whether or how often you need to be using a hyperbaric chamber. And there's a lot of controversy, people saying, because it looks like he has a hyperbaric chamber that's like $100,000, but you can buy a hyperbaric chamber for, I mean, really as little as like $5,000 to $15,000 or $20,000. It's a lot more accessible than you would think. However, to buy one, you do have to have a doctor's prescription. I'm wondering, is that something you ever prescribe? Do you think people can be doing it in their home as long as that they're buying the right equipment? And do you think that there's like a routine that somebody should be regularly using the hyperbaric chamber on a regular basis, or can they just use it? I think I know that Bryan Johnson was seeming to infer that you just need to do it very like maybe once or twice a week for a few weeks to get the benefit. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? In terms of like, can people have a hyperbaric chamber at home? What's the cheapest you think they could buy it for? Or should they be going to a facility to do that?
Wow, you opened a Pandora's box with that. Okay, let me do quickly. So, I love Bryan Johnson for getting a lot of this out to the mass public. He's a great marketing. A lot of times he tends to. A lot of his protocols are not what anybody else does. And he's also spent so much time optimizing that what he gets done is what almost would happen to nobody else. So you really got to be careful judging a lot of stuff just by what happens to him. It's kind of, you mentioned the semaglutide before, is that he's so healthy, he does so many things that what he may get benefits from is not what anybody else would. And also, again, like you said, he can spend millions of dollars on the stuff and also on somebody to fix them. So it's like, when you kind of judge stuff based on him, it's also, or Ben Greenfield, people like that, it's great to get the word out there, but you got to take it with a pound of salt too. But You can get a hyperbaric without a prescription. The higher quality ones are going to be expensive. You usually want at least one with at least 1.5 ATMs in most cases. So if you're going to get one, you want to get one that's quality. Simple protocol, you're going to have to do usually about 10 to 20 sessions. You do 1 or 2 sessions, you're not going to get a huge bang for the buck. You may notice something. They're great for inflammation for sports. That's why a lot of the teams have them. Most all of them have them one now, but you usually want to do prolonged treatment protocols. I mean, if for an acute illness, you're doing it 2 to 4 times a week. If you're doing a more health optimization, you may want to do anywhere between 10 to 12 sessions a month. But I definitely see, the studies for every week are coming out for brain and inflammation and stem cell production and heart health and all the, in terms of the benefits of it. So it's definitely there. Again, in major cities, they're very rarely available. In other cities, they're not. So I think that it's something that definitely almost everybody should look for availability. I think I tell people, if it's not something you're going to do regularly or the cost of anywhere between $8,000 and $15,000 scares you off, and just don't get one of your own. It's just not. It's something that it's great to have if you're going to use it and make it a part of your protocol. But buying, you don't need to unless you don't need to buy the $50,000 or $100,000 one that he has in his home.
I have a hot soak tank, and I'm considering I want to sell it and get a hyperbaric chamber, but there's obviously a lot that goes with that. But yeah, in terms of like optimizing for longevity and health, I think there's probably going to be more science that comes out that shows these benefits. So, or at least hopefully it doesn't become like intermittent fasting is or cold plunging at least. And then just lastly on the plasma exchange, I know that's something Bryan Johnson himself has done as well before. So is that something that do you ever recommend? So I'm personally like 35. All my biomarkers I'm with Function Health. Everything's like perfect basically. But is that something that somebody like me should consider like now, or should I wait until I'm 40 or 45 before I start considering like that? Or is the science just not there yet?
I tell everybody. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I tell everybody if they're over, even now, under 30, if they can afford to do it, they should do it. And if they can afford to do 2 to 3 sessions a year. The data is just every day there's new important. It does. We think it helps. The ones in the U.S. we think are really good at getting rid of some of the toxins as well. We know the one that's in Europe, but hopefully coming over to the States in the next year or two, called Plasmapheresis, has been proven to get rid of toxins even better. So you don't want to be behind the curve. If you can do it and afford it and are not needle phobic, I would be doing it at 20, 25 years old.
But I don't believe that doesn't filter out the microplastics that we assume are in the blood, though, right?
The ones we have now that are people who are doing the ionospheresis, and doing the plasma here in the States, and they have seen levels with the plastics coming down. It's just not as good as the ones that are in Europe. And it's also a very initial test. We don't know the exact dosing, and then we also don't know the efficacy of these initial microplastic tests. So it's still kind of a catch-56 that everything is still kind of in infancy. We it looks like it does, but if you want proven perfect data, that's going to take a couple of years to come out. So that depends again where your levels are set.
And just as a clarity, there was the popularity in this idea of young blood many years ago. So if I'm correct, this plasma exchange has kind of replaced that, where that you don't need to do a blood exchange with somebody younger. This kind of been replaced by this plasma exchange protocol. Is that correct?
There's some overlap. They're not exactly the same. This plasmapheresis has been used in hospitals for years. Young blood was kind of another idea. They do work. There's some, again, overlap in how they do work a little bit. But yeah, young blood is kind of initial studies were just bad on it. So people who are kind of into that have gone all in with the plasma to achieve some of those things they were hoping for autoimmune regulation, inflammation reduction, just kind of regenerating the cells. So it does do some of those things. So in that regard, yes.
Well, Dr. Paulvin, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an incredibly insightful episode, and I really appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and advice with us today. So for everyone listening, you can learn more about Dr. Paulvin's work and connect with him directly on his website at drpaulvin.com. That's PAULVIN.com, or follow him on Instagram at Dr. Paulvin. And as always, resources and everything mentioned in today's show, including studies, books, supplements, and links, are available in the show notes at our website at mindhack.com. If you enjoyed today's episode or found it helpful, please consider sharing it with a friend, leaving a review, or liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps to get the word out. Thanks again for listening. I'm Cody McLean, and this has been MindHack. Until next time, keep optimizing and stay curious.